My name is Kathy, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of British Columbia.
That's great. I'm Dominique. I'm the Vice President Research and Innovation at McGill University.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rube, for sitting with us today and being here for the interview. I'm going to start off with some broader questions that span the course of your career. Okay. So to start, you've held leadership roles at SSHRC, Concordia, and now McGill. So you have a really rare cross-sector overview of Canada's research ecosystem. What do you see as the most important shifts needed to make our research and innovation ecosystem more agile and better equipped to tackle today's very complex societal challenges?
Well, it's a question that we've been thinking about for many years. And when you mentioned my role at SSHRC, and this was a tenure between 2015 and 2022, where there was also some rapid changes in the ecosystem at the time, but it was more around the question of equity, diversity, and inclusion in the ecosystem, or also around indigenous research, and obviously interdisciplinarity and high risk, high reward. And I think we managed to make some important progress during these years to attain these objectives. Nevertheless, there are still some challenges that are sort of structural in the ecosystem and that are a bit driven by, of course, Canada as it is, in terms of how we distribute responsibilities between federal responsibilities and provinces, the challenges in developing an integrated industrial strategy that can align with provincial strategies and with research strategies. And I think that the lack of convergence of these different strategies has brought Canada to a fragmentation of initiatives that really needs to be looked at to streamline and bring back together some coherence between the different instruments before we start creating some new ones. I can expand.
Amazing. I'll ask you some questions to expand on that, starting with EDI initiatives. So EDI has been in the news recently for not the best reasons oftentimes. So I wanted to ask, so during your time at SSHRC, you worked on a lot of embedding of EDI into funding evaluation and access. So how can we continue to move from EDI as a requirement to EDI as a driver of research excellence and innovation?
We have to recognize that we're at a difficult time regarding equity, diversity, and inclusion in the sense that the urgency that everybody's feeling to find some solutions to the challenges that we're facing sort of put that in the back burner. And if we're not careful, we're going to lose some important progress, as I mentioned a bit earlier, that we made. I think that in the process, I think that an important part of our community has managed to integrate the concepts in how they conceive excellence. Instead of wanting to address it on the side, they say, no, this is part of excellence. Excellence doesn't exist without inclusion. And so it's sort of now integrated in the processes. But it's not true everywhere. So voices will need to continue to rise. And that's where it's difficult because people's preoccupation, and I might even say attention span of people have moved towards something else. Everybody's now concerned about, defense and sovereignty of Canada. That suddenly is more important than inclusion. But it's associated. How can you manage sovereignty of Canada if you're not inclusive and if you don't accept that Canada is based on that diversity and that our strength is based on that diversity? So it's going to be an important time to make sure that we remind ourselves of these principles when we go forward.
Yeah, it's wonderful that you point out that so many of these concepts are interconnected. Sovereignty, inclusion, diversity, and that those all contribute to making Canada and science the way it is. More successful and stronger. So moving on to discussing of excellence. So as you're currently the VPRI at McGill, how do you define excellence and impact in research today? And how can universities and funding agencies better align the incentives so that research excellence and societal relevance reinforce each other?
I've never seen again a dichotomy, a bit like ADI. I mean, going back to the same concept, I don't see the difference between ADI and excellence, and I don't see also the difference between excellence and impact, in the sense that there are different kinds of impact, and at some moment in our society, different kinds of impacts are needed or more urgent. I was just discussing with some colleagues from some on the business side, and for them, they need that open innovation ecosystem where innovation is going to continue to emerge, so that they can literally. We will always need that open innovation ecosystem where the new innovations and the new discoveries are going to need to emerge and are going to feed that industry that is needed. And that is supported even by industry. They don't want us to move away from that. But at the same time, there is a discourse when we need to recognize that everybody needs to sit down and contribute to the thinking and the solutions that are needed on what is not working. Which doesn't mean that we need to forget what is working. This is working. This is a strength of Canada. It is recognized. We don't want to compromise it. It's working well. Now, how do we make sure that what's working well can contribute to what's not working as well, which is that productivity issue, of course, in Canada, which is that capacity to retain our innovation in Canada, which is our capacity to grow these companies, and what is the role in universities in that, and what is the role of the other stakeholders in the ecosystem to contribute to that.
That's actually a great segue into my next question. You basically asked the question yourself. That question is, in your view, what role should universities play in fostering entrepreneurship and innovation?
Well, I think we have in this case, I think it's our responsibilities. I think that the universities are a very stable organization in our society. We do face also a critical moment because of the lack of the loss of trust in science in general, that we need to acknowledge. And we also need to acknowledge that we're partially responsible for it, because the ivory tower, of course, concept is partly true, in terms it's a very protected environment. And we need to make sure that we respond to the next generations. Sometimes I hear in the budget language or with some bureaucrats or some stakeholders talking about deploying skills, And I find, I don't know, how do you think? Would you like to think that you're being deployed? This is not the way that we need to think about youth. We don't deploy the skills. We need to attract them where they can be seen, where they can find value, where they can thrive. And that's the role of the universities, to create that first ecosystem where they see entrepreneurship as somewhere where they can thrive, and not somewhere where they need to take all the risk for the future of Canada. It's not fair to put the responsibility on the next generations. You need to save Canada by creating these companies. No, we need to create the environment and support them to make sure that they're successful in doing this.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting some of the pressures it often feels like that's put on youth, as well as the roles of universities in being able to actually foster talent. For my last question, this is a question we ask all of the CSPC interviewees. The question is, what is your opinion on the value of the Canadian Science Policy Centre and its position in the community as a connection hub, knowledge mobilizer, and talent incubator in the science and innovation policy landscape?
I've been coming to that conference since I think the very start. It's been because I was, of course, in Ottawa from 2015 and 2022. So I really saw the conference and the organization evolve in time. And I'm fascinated by its capacity to attract all these voices and all these conversations that we manage to have in the corridors, and that really stimulates some real connectivity between the core stakeholders of that ecosystem. So that's a great. And I would add that part of my admiration for the conference, it's the place that it gives to youth. And I'm really sincere when I say that, because it's not something that we usually see and we could have a response. We could have a conference that is entirely controlled or at least managed by bureaucrats and high-level stakeholders. Whereas no, we really have that vibrance that comes from the team around the conference that really makes a difference in this conference.
Yeah, as someone who's been volunteering for 3 years, I'm also really grateful for the space that this conference gives me.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rube, for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
Thank you.